push before the evening's over, and we don't spend a lot of time, extra time that you all don't have, I know. So first thing we have on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I will say I have two items to add. We have an invoice from Engineering Associates for $4,730, which we need to make sure we get sent to be paid. We've already appropriated those funds. And the other item we need to add, which we'll add after the minutes also, is we're to the point now where we're going to have to engineer our drainage, grading, utilities, all that plan's about ready to go. So we're going to try to appropriate another $20,000 to Engineering Associates to get those plans done, or up to $20,000 is what we've been doing. So those will be two additional items to the agenda. Does anybody have anything else to add? Tony? Bill? Anybody? So if we don't have anything else, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented with changes.
So moved with changes.
We have a first, second.
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Second item is approval of minutes. Everyone should have received the minutes from last meeting. Any adjustments or corrections to the minutes? Folks, they weren't that long.
I'm good.
We need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
We got a motion to second.
I second it.
We got a motion to second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay. So, well, since we'll add the new items, I have an invoice from Engineering Associates for $4,730. And that was the second phase of our initial plan for the Forest Canton subdivision. So we'll need, I guess, a motion to submit that for payment.
We approved up to
We did approve that.
5,000, right?
Up to 5,000, correct.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion.
I second it.
We got a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Additional appropriations for additional engineering, as I described earlier. Any questions, comments about that?
When does the ARP meet to?
What's that?
When does the ARP committee meet to formally divide the money?
Cannot answer that question. I've been trying to get
That's
answers to
Randy.
that question.
You're on the ARP committee. When do you guys meet to start passing the money out or approve the applications?
April 12th,
Well, okay.
at the depot.
But we're on a different round of that, I think, Paul. Fair?
No?
We're on a different round of that approval, or not? Huh?
We're in the counties, right?
Pardon?
We're on the county ARP committees, our discussion, our application.
I'd have to go back and look at the list.
Okay.
Okay.
I can't memorize all of them.
So as we've done on the past, these funds we've been actually taking from the courthouse TIF district. So I need a discussion, either a discussion, vote her up, vote her down, to get a motion or something here.
I'll motion.
We
Make
have a
a
motion
Is it 20?
for what?
Up to 20,000.
Up to 20,000. We have a second on that?
I'll second.
We got a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Been approved. Since Ron is here, he's on the agenda. We'll probably keep him on the agenda.
Let's hope so.
An update on the downtown apartments. I know
Well,
Ron's got some progress to report.
There's good news and bad news. The good news is, since German American decided to change their terms in the middle of the stream, we did go to Springs Valley, we did get approved fairly, immediately just about. But the problem is now, product's going up faster than appraisal is. And I don't know what our options are. Since last 1st of November, material and things went up $400,000 on a $3.5 million project. It appraised for 3.7 million or something like 3.6 million. but it's went up $400,000. And that don't add, that just flat comes out of Ron Smith and HBS pocket. So, not that we're absolutely committed to do it, but how fast, I mean, we've got to, I mean, even Ed, 1st of April, heating and air conditioning goes up $200 a unit. You know, and I just don't know, you know, it's going up faster than we can, you know, we've even bought options on lumber, we've bought, you know, we've got probably $200,000 in the deal right now. And it's going up faster than the appraisal is on the property. Plus the rates went up. German American, I'm not giving you excuses, guys. Nobody wants to listen to excuses. I mean, but none of them are anything that I can control. At this point, we are proceeding as fast as we can because nobody will give you a commitment on anything for the most you get is 2 weeks on anything you get when you buy that much commodity. They won't give you a commitment on anything. I can give a commitment on concrete for 60 days, but that's about it. I do have another investors coming in. If they decide to come in, there won't be no problem. It'll be something different, but I don't have that secured yet. So I don't know what I can tell you I can do. I don't know what our options. I know you've been great to work with. You've done everything that I've asked. And I don't know what options or anything you want me to do or try to do, or if you would seek somebody else. I'm gonna do whatever I can to do, because you guys bent over backwards for me. But at this point, I'm doing everything we can to get, we are approved, and we do have the financing secured, but how do you know, if you get to the end and we're $600,000 short, we have to come up with that. And there's no way, I mean, yeah, we could probably come up with $350,000 extra, but when you get to the end, who's going to finance that? You know, we have to make sure we got our butts covered to the end of the product. So I don't know what our options are, or what you guys, because I'm willing to listen to anything, to try anything, so.
Is this something we need to look at, Chris? To figure out what all the options are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what they are.
I don't either.
Well, that's exactly right, because
I mean, we know there was an initial time scale.
right,
on this thing. We
absolutely,
know that.
and I understand, and I'm not denying whatever, you know, it is what it is.
I mean, I think the bottom line is we really would like to get it done.
Sure.
That's the bottom line.
But it's back to, okay, I mean, rates went up almost, I got it up, I mean, it went up 0.5%, but that don't seem like much, but it is on the overall. Because, I mean, obviously, we've got engineering, you know, we don't have a whole lot invested in the ground, but we've got a lot of other money invested in things that we're not gonna be able to get back one way or the other. That's all it is, that's not a deal, but it is, we are definitely interested. But then when you do, if you raise the price, then what's that gonna do to rent? I mean, you know, we already had the rent figured as high as I thought we could get by with here in town. You know, if I'd have to raise the rent to $950, where's that gonna put you? You know, then you got something that's almost over the limit, I think. So, you know, it cost is cost. I mean, you're up to, the cost is up to about $90 a square foot, and that's, you know, that is what it is, and that's meeting all the criteria that I said, because it is going to be a little bit, you know, we are putting brick on it, we are pouring all concrete, but I don't know what our options are. So, I mean, if there is any. So, I'm not opposed if if we could make some other, we'll do whatever we need to do to try to make it go through, or otherwise. So we're still trying to get the thing done. I mean,
So you haven't broke ground yet?
no, I mean, we've got it ready to go to the state, but, you know, where do you start? You start writing checks, you get to the end, what if you run out? You know, I've got to make sure it's not like I can go to there and get another $500,000 at the end. Because they're only going to loan you 80% of appraised value on the property.
In Ron's defense, I will tell you that in 23 years of business, for the first time ever, 2 weeks ago, I had a letter of intent Every time a project is bid, we immediately send a letter of intent to all of our pricing. And for the first time in 23 years, it was denied because of the economy and the inability to get product. They would not guarantee that price would hold. But that's never
I mean, you
happened.
know as well as anything, I mean, windows went up $40,000 in 3 weeks.
So it is different right now.
And, you know, everything, you know, I called to get a price on structure wood. It's been semi-stable, but long range, some of this long range is supposed to go to $80 a sheet instead of, and it's at 60 now, or 45 now. You know, and then there's 3,000 sheets of structure wood on that model for that, 2,500, all of them. You know, how do you just, where do I stop? I mean, that's all the things that kept me, you know, originally when we, back in October, and this is back to, we had a letter of commitment from German American for 3.49%. It's gonna loan us 80%. We get to the end, you know, one of their main man, and this is the truth, I mean, the guy handling our property, he left the company, they didn't give it to anybody for 6 weeks. We didn't even know where, I assumed it was being appraised. But anyway, that's still just, but that would have made the difference right there. You get to the end and they tell you gotta bring $750,000 to closing. Well, you know, I could probably we might be able to come up with 500 with cash, but that's what you had to bring to the closing before they got to give them the money so they can loan it back, give it back to you. I mean, you're gonna get it back. I mean, it's going down through the project. Everything's changed in the since first year. I mean, you can't get letter commitment on any kind of material right now to mount to anything. They'll give you a guarantee.
Any thoughts, folks? Paul? Don't know. There's so much uncertainty out there, you can't, you know.
Well, one of the problems is, from a legal perspective, even if we said, you're done, Ron, who's gonna, so what? Is somebody prepared to step right in and say, oh, we'll do it?
I mean, what we
I
can.
don't know.
What we can do is we can just keep looking at this thing month over month now and kind of see what the progress is.
And I'm definitely open to that, you know, if it looks like there's any way we can, but we're definitely interested, and we do have a letter commitment, I mean, they do, from Springs Valley.
Well, could you get us a copy of that, or get it to Chris at least?
Yeah.
And then just keep me or Chris updated, or any of us updated on the progress, if anything changes, and we'll just have to look at this month over month,
Yeah.
kind of see where we are. And if it looks like this thing's gonna continue long-term, maybe we step back and wait, I don't know.
Well, let's keep the options open too. If somebody does come along, I mean, I'm not gonna stand in the way of doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody came in and said,
Sure,
I'll
absolutely.
build the same thing and I'll do it start next week, then okay.
Well, absolutely, I mean, I'll do whatever, because you guys have been great to me. Everybody here in this town's been good to me. So I'll do whatever I can.
So we'll just put it back on the agenda for next month, Ron,
Okay, thank you.
and I'll bother you later.
Thanks, Ron.
How's that? So I did forget one thing, didn't I?
TIF.
Balances. Sorry about that, folks. TIF balances, TIF allocation 1, which is the courthouse. Right now, we have $264,575.84. The Wapaka district, which is number 3, is $227,208.20. Webb Wheel is at $328,326.33. That bond issue is due to pay off April the 10th, I believe is the date.
That may get bumped to May, but.
Okay, somewhere around that?
Yeah.
So that's gonna leave us still a balance, I think that we owe about 270 or 280,000, so we'll still have a balance there. Riverview West, that's $3,434.60, Tell City 1 and Tell City 2, we have no TIF, we're creating no TIFs in that area at this point. But just for folks that don't know, we had bonds issued on the Webb Wheel area and voted a month or two ago to pay those off. So we will, with the exception of Wapaka, will be the only outstanding bonds that the Redevelopment Commission has on the TIF districts.
Right.
So Yes, Randy?
And John, the collections for May and also.
Have not come in yet.
I mean, though, they will still fall into the TIF district?
Yes, at this
Until
point.
you shut the TIF district down?
Yeah, so we have, that meeting is in June. I think it's by June, right? End of June?
It is by June,
Yeah, so in June, normally that's when we make the decision as a commission, if we pass it through, shut it down, whatever we do. 2 years ago now, Paul, 2 years ago,
Right about that. I thought.
we passed through 85% of the courthouse TIF to the back to the
85-15.
taxpayer.
I thought Jason Simler, recall here, we really can't pay the web wheel bond off until August, can we?
No,
No.
it's
No, no.
it's either April or May, depending on, we may have to give them additional notice.
The bondholders approved the early payoff.
Yeah.
Right, but I thought
No.
we couldn't probably make the payment till
No,
mid-September.
we're gonna pay it early. We're paying it early.
Sooner the better.
And actually, Jason will be here in June.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I was wondering, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we are gonna have to meet in June.
Yes, and he
I
will
think
be,
it's before the 15th.
yeah, he will be here, so we may have to end up with 2 meetings in June. Or we may do it in the May meeting. We can just do it in the May meeting. Probably just do that in the May meeting. So right now, 85% of TIF 1, which is the courthouse, has been being passed through. Wapaka, we can't pass anything through because we still have outstanding bonds. The web wheel TIF, once we get these paid off, that's a conversation that we're gonna have to have, what we're gonna do with it. Depending on, there's partially is gonna depending on, I think, some funding that's gonna possibly needed if we decide to keep moving forward with the Forest Canton subdivision. That's gonna be probably a big player in that, potentially. Although things work out the way I think they should, it may not be a huge issue, I hope. So, but correct, Randy. So in the May meeting, we'll probably make that decision. In June, Jason Smelter is going to be here and go through all of the TIF districts, which is our annual meeting. And what they do is they look at all the TIF districts, they look how much cash comes in, how much we owe, and we get kind of a rundown of where we stand with each one of our TIF districts. And that is required annually. Traditionally, we've been doing that in the fall. We pushed it to June because it's a lot more appropriate for us to do it then. So so anybody wants to come to our meetings, you're always welcome. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're not so fun, but, so probably the reason most of you, number one, have been invited, and thank you for coming. We thought it was appropriate for everyone to be notified that this is going on, number one, and that if this thing continually goes forward, there should be, hopefully, number one, business for each one of you that are in this room, but it's going to show that we've got some progress going within our community. There's been a lot of work gone into it, so I'll just kind of give you a recap since the last meeting of where we stand, okay? The preliminary engineering is done. The lots have been laid out. The grading plan is in process. I spent several hours with the Luttrings just to learn how this works, which was pretty entertaining, actually. So we have a pretty good idea of what our budget's going to be for the project, and it's going to be somewhere around $1 million, the way it looks. When we look at putting in the streets, getting the utilities to each one of the lots, the cheapest part of this whole thing is leveling the lots. They act like that's not a big deal. So I guess they know how to do that, but anyway. So I've had some preliminary discussion with them, and they have sent me back, which they call it a budget of what they anticipate the cost is going to be. So we're shooting around that $1 million mark at this point in time. Of that does include running an estimate of running our utilities. So Carol has been in contact, I think, with Antro and some of the others, and I think, Tony, you talked to several of them too. So I want to let everybody know where we stand there. Tony?
REC estimated, they gave us a rough estimate of $45,000 to $65,000. That will all be returned to the Redevelopment Commission. As lots are sold, it will be divided by the amount of lots. So if we do 10 lots and it's 100 grand, every time they do a hookup, they will rebate us back the money. So our investment will come back to us, and then we can decide what to do with it after that. So that's a great thing. They're looking long-term, another customer, more user fees. So they're going to invest in us, and they're going to turn around and give it back to us. So that's where REC is.
Intro shot me a price of $65 a linear foot, and then of course all of the necessary connections.
Which comes
and
out to about
whatnot.
150,000 roughly.
Yeah. And that's flat, they're not waiving on that. PSC, I'm still waiting on numbers. I've got hookup numbers, but we're not hooking up. It's trying to get the specifics regarding the conduit necessary. The goal is to obviously put that in place, so we're not cutting concrete or asphalt or what have you. We want everything in place so that when someone just chooses to develop on the site, it's basically, you know, either pull the wire or the wires there are already set for an extension to the house when it's ready. So still working on those numbers.
Ohio Valley Gas is gonna do it for nothing. Just so you know. So buy gas, if they're gonna do it for nothing, we're happy. They actually, when I talked to Rob, he's like, yeah, we'll just run for you. So the kind of the plan on the utilities and the road is to get the road to construction phase, asphalt without the final coat on it until most of the homes are built. All the utilities are planning at this point to be in place with hookups ready. So as they build the homes, all you're doing is as a contractor, all you're doing is hooking up to the utility. So that's kind of, and then the lots are going to be ready, prepared. Huh?
Sewer.
And sewer. The sewer, I've talked to Tell City Sewer, and we don't know a price yet because they're going to look at two different options out there. One option is the I'm going to use it, the pump system, so each house has a pump. The other option is a gravity flow and an individual pump system to get it into their high pressure, because it's a high pressure that sits on that piece of property right now. I think they're weighing towards the gravity flow. I think that's what they want. But they're checking with their engineers to see if we can get kind of an idea of an estimate of a cost. But when I talked to Dan Luttering, he kind of included what he thought the costs were going to be, so we have a rough idea of that also, depending on how we go. But they're working on it. I think they used Bernardi and Lockmuller, so they were supposed to get back on that one with us. We've also met with City of Tell City a couple of times. And last week we met with their technical advisory committee to kind of lay out our plans. And we're going to be in the process of filing for a rezone once I get the documents from Steve to let me know how he wants that done. So we're going to keep that going along with everything else. We're just trying to juggle all the balls we can so we don't have wasted time. That's all we're doing. So once we get the rezone done, which I think will happen, technical advisory committee really didn't have any issues because the only utility we're using from the city is sewer. And I don't think they really have an issue. It's just a matter of what's it going to look like. We also I met with the hospital board last week. We're working through the details on how the land is going to be purchased from the homeowners. And so hopefully in the next meeting we'll have all those details lined out too. So the hospital is still on board with this. Been very generous on allowing us to do the things that we've done at this point with their property. So next month, I think we're going to have all those details, more than likely, I'm hoping. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So what we get down to today is we need to start working on what are these houses going to start looking at. I mean, I'm going to be under the assumption this thing is going to happen. And I'll say that because today, Aaron and I met with Region 15, right, on the READY grant. It sounds extremely promising. We will get something. Still working through the ARP stuff. Hopefully we can work through some of those funding. If neither one of those work, we have availability of funds through the Redevelopment Commission. Okay? It's not the direction we would love to go, but we can still get this done. So we have a lot of back sources. Yes, Keith?
You've spent some money already.
We spent
Looking to
less than
spend some more.
$10,000.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you've
Yeah.
overspent, I don't mean that.
That's
But
okay.
Is the hospital, which he's here, are you guys are we guaranteed that the hospital's not gonna sell that property?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the conversation that we've been having, correct?
Okay.
That is correct.
Basically, that
We-
property's off
we-
the market.
We are all on the same page here. Yes, Keith. So the worst thing that's ever gonna happen to this thing is we get this thing running, we have streets and roads and property sitting there, and nobody puts a house on it, okay? Eventually, somebody will put a house on it. That's my theory. But I've actually had several calls from folks that are saying, look, we're ready to go. Once you're ready, we're ready. And not just one house, multiples. So we'll see what the whole construction world brings us. It may delay that a little bit, but eventually this thing will settle back down. We know this.
I had a realtor call me today, and want 6 lots.
Yeah, so I think once they see it, the other thing that I'm learning, and I'll just tell you what I've learned, and hopefully we can get this written down for folks, is the process. So if anybody wants to do this again, we can streamline this process for anybody that wants to try this, okay? Some of it's a little quirky, I'll just tell you, and I think it's relatively new to the community because we just don't do this very often here. Is that fair? But we're going to do it now. So it's bottom line, I think it's going to happen. The question is, where do we get the funding? And we have sources. So if everybody said no, we can fund it. We can make it all happen. This commission can make it happen if they so choose, okay? It's not the ideal way, but we can do it. So, you know, I think we have to go in with optimism this thing is going to work, bottom line. And that's the world that I live in. I will tell you this commission's got a lot of time and energy in this, and we are getting zero compensation, as in zero compensation. So there's a commitment by this group to make this thing happen. So don't think we're just kind of throwing this out there, and I'm going to use the term we're some other government entity. We're not. We may have been, but we're not anymore. So again, kind of where we are. For those, does anybody not know what's going on out there? I can kind of give you a synopsis, or I cannot. It's up to you all. Okay. So about a year or so ago, and it was actually with the help of the hospital, they came to us and said, look, we've got some property we would love to do something with. We know housing is a concern. What can we do? So the commission got together and said, look, we think we can create a subdivision on this piece of property. And it's the 37 and 237 corner is what it is on the, I guess that's technically the north side, northeast side. So we started this process about less than a year ago probably, and from them we've created the plan and we've created a lot of the ways to get this done. The plan is this: the hospital needs some compensation for that, so we're looking at somewhere in the estimate of about $10,000 a lot is what it will cost the homeowner. All the infrastructure, all the risk we're taking as a commission. So if you want to build a house, you have your house cost plus $10,000 and you're done. No risk, basically zero risk is what we're trying to do, because we know we need this style of housing. It looks like the lot design is for houses of about 1,500 to 1,700 square feet. At this point, the question is, do we put in basements or don't put in basements? We're leaning towards not, if the truth be known, just because of how the property lays. But that's something that's where I want to start to get input from the public, because I'm not a builder. Tony's the closest thing we got here to a builder, right? We've never done this. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that these houses are built or consistent, and it makes a very, very nice subdivision neighborhood, okay? So we are going to put some rules and restrictions in. That's going to happen, but we don't know what it's going to look like yet. So this is where I'm asking for your all's input. And if you don't want to speak today, that's fine. Just let one of us know. If you have things you would like to discuss, that's fine too. We'll take notes and then we'll sit down and figure out what suits the whole thing the best. Fair enough? So don't be shy. Yes, Ed?
I'm confused. Originally, when you said it, I thought you were getting the lots ready and you were done, but you're not. You're gonna be there through the construction of the home also?
No.
We have nothing to do with the construction. We have nothing to do.
You're just selling a lot and you're done now.
Bingo.
Okay.
So if you come in and say, John, I want 3 lots, or the commission, I want 3 lots, I'm gonna build 3 spec houses on. Once the dollars are completed, we pay the hospital, and that's only way.
But you'll have some covenants or.
There'll be some.
We are gonna create covenants within the subdivision, so if you wanna build a house, your house isn't like totally different than
Right.
your house, okay?
Okay.
We have to have some
Houses.
restraint, we have to have some restraints, you know, from where did, you know, do we do outbuilding? Can you really allow outbuildings? Does it have to be brick or does it have to be sided? We have to get some consistency, otherwise it's gonna be a mess. Does that make sense? And that's what we have to be able to put in place. The other thing that we know we're gonna have in place is you can't buy 3 lots for 10,000 each and then turn around and sell them for 30. That ain't gonna happen, folks, okay? This is not, we're not into this for somebody to start flipping these things. Now, if you build a house a spec house and you sell it, we don't care at that point, okay? But this is all about what our purpose is, and that's to provide a growth within our community. And part of that growth has been economic growth through industry. Now we have to have growth through housing. And we have to continually this process to have both, because we can't have one without the other, okay? So that's kind of the purpose of the Redevelopment Commission when you really dig down to what we're supposed to be doing as a group. So this is what we're gonna do. So again, that's where we are, Ed. There will be some restrictions, yes. Yes. Yes.
You said 15 to 1,700 square foot. Now, that's a single floor, right? Are you
That's a
allowing
single
2
floor.
stories?
2 stories would be fine, but that'd be on a single floor, correct?
Right.
The challenge with the basements out there is the sewers. That's the challenge with the basements out there.
I'm good with no basement.
So if we can figure out a way to put basements in with the sewer, we would consider that, but my concern talking to the sewer department is that would make things extremely expensive.
You just wouldn't have to put, if you didn't put a restroom in the basement, all you need is a sump pump. I mean, that should be up to the homeowner to whether or not they would want a basement.
That ought to be up to what the ground's gonna call for.
Yeah.
How the lot lays.
So we may have some that can and some that can't, because as you look at that ground, there's some sections you could almost do a walkout
If they go
basement.
away from gravity, and you go to the injector, you can put it,
Either you want.
it won't make any difference.
So that, is it slab or non-slab is gonna be determined really kind of how the sewage thing kind of comes
But
out.
also,
for us.
just like you said before, though, it depends on how the ground's gonna lay. Because every one of those, you know, because, I mean, I'm kind of familiar with it, but not exactly, but it depends on how the ground lays. Because some's gonna, may demand a basement.
Right.
Some of the southern lots are
Sure.
below the sewers, the northern
Right,
lots
but
will
then
be
in that
above the
case,
sewer.
I mean, you could still have a basement, but you wouldn't be able to have, like, I'm not that they put injector systems in a basement. You can pump it up anyway. Pump it up where the sewer's gravity the rest of the way. I mean, doesn't mean you can't put it in here. But I think the basements depend on the lay of the ground.
And I think as a covenants, if you want to use that term very simply, I don't know if we would have to include that you can or cannot. We can't, we're not going to say you can or cannot, but you're right, it's going to depend on
That's
how
gonna
it
have to be
sits.
made with that to fit
Yeah.
that and the sewer.
But you're gonna have to fit what's already in
The city's
place.
gonna have some input on some of that too.
Yeah, you're going to have to fit what's in place.
It would not be usual to put a restriction on basements in the code.
Yeah.
Because you can't see it, who cares?
Yeah.
What you
we're-
care about is what visually is on the
Right,
outside.
when we provide the utilities, they're going to be what they are.
That's right.
So
Yes.
they're going to be what they are. So we're not going to go excessive on the utilities just because somebody wants a basement, somebody doesn't. That's kind of my point, bottom line. So, any thoughts on, and I'll just throw this out, 2 stories are fine. I mean, we're not going to restrict the 2 stories. It will be restricted to residential only, so there will be no commercial in this. It's going to be zoned as R2. And R2 zoning fits all the Tell City zoning requirements. We've already checked that in terms of lot size, street size, and all those sort of things. So square footage, all that kind of works. Yes?
You're selling these lots, this may be in your rules also, but can you buy 3 lots and put a bigger home?
No. No.
The intent is to help drive tax dollars.
More homes.
And hopefully everybody moves in, has 10 kids.
Yes. So no, we won't let you build in the middle of 2 lots. How's that?
Do you have a timeline that a house has to be built?
In terms of when it started or when it's purchased or
I know it's tricky right now, but I know a lot of subdivisions in other areas have a timeline that there has to be a house built on them.
I haven't thought about it, but I don't think that's a bad idea.
I don't think it needs to be super strict because people can't get
Right.
builders, people can't get supplies, but you don't want it open for 5 to 10 years.
I agree.
I agree. We have had that conversation with the hospital also.
So you say residential, you mean
there won't be rentals or anybody renting their house
Sing-
out.
single family homes. No income restrictions, none of that kind of stuff.
But we will have restrictions on renting it.
What's that?
Restrictions on renting it, the home out.
We can.
Yeah, but that's one question, is whether you want restrictions on all rental or short-term rental versus long-term rental. You know, short-term rental would be like a B&B, Airbnb or something like that. I've seen disputes in the county before where people come in and build these homes and then somebody comes in and pops a couple of cabins up. Not that you would have a cabin in this location, but you get the idea. And then all of a sudden you've got your neighbor's house is an Airbnb and you got a party every weekend right there. So that's a legitimate.
I think that's something to totally consider,
So-
yes.
That has to be an ordinance, right?
You can, in covenants and restrictions, you can restrict leasing short-term or long-term for that matter. But you can restrict them in the covenants. If you tell me to write it that way.
You know, and I think if we're trying to grow the population in Perry County, we shouldn't have any long-term, right? It shouldn't be short-term rentals at all.
Yeah, we're looking at residential.
So when Ron gets his apartment done, that'll take care of that for us.
We'll say put 3 or 4 of them. But again, yeah, we don't want people coming in every week. It's
Correct.
When you use the schools, you're not going to use me.
I mean, the intent, you're right, the intent of this is we want a community. You know, we want, so if you look at the map, those who've seen the map, and I don't have any extras, I apologize.
I've
for
got
that,
one of you, Madeline.
There's actually a section in there that's wide open at this point that we have proposed to park in if we wanted to. If these things sell fast and we need it for homes, we can always resort to that. But the idea is try to get this more as a community kind of an area versus people coming and going all the time.
Are the lots all relatively the same size?
There are a few that are larger than others, depending on how they just lay out, but relatively speaking, yes. There's a few on the end, if you will, that they sprawl out a little bit just because of how the piece of property lays, but yes, they're all relatively the same size.
They're what?
Am I thinking of?
10,000,
Third acre?
about 10,000 square feet, a little more than 10,000 square feet.
I don't know. I haven't figured it out. If Kenny was here, he could tell you. I don't know.
A little bit less than that.
Is it?
Yes. Most of them are 70 to 75 foot wide.
So what-
Some of them are bigger than that.
Yeah,
There's
5 by 140,
4, 5 that are 110.
most of them 75 by 1.
So when we looked at this, the original plan was larger lots, and then the conversation was, you know, there's a lot of folks that just don't want that much yard work. So we actually slimmed them down. Then we looked at what the case builds were doing and said, you know what, they have larger lots. Why don't we let them, which we should, let them develop those for that class, and this is just for a different group of people that want something a little smaller, quite frankly. So we don't want to compete with anybody, and our intent was never to compete with anybody. The problem we ran into, there was nobody, with the exception of case builds, really trying to really create more and more housing development, especially on a single-family standpoint. So we have potential rentals, non-rentals, which we got on our list. Anything else? The one thing I thought about was outbuildings. Is that something that most people would agree should be restricted or not restricted?
Need to put restriction on that.
The line in front of it has to match the exterior of the house. Anything facing the street.
Maybe be careful about somebody building a garage and living until they're ready to build.
No pole
You
barns.
gonna allow pole barns?
No pole barns, no. I'll tell you that one right now, no. The answer is no.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
But if you're not gonna allow pole barns, you shouldn't allow buildings on skis. You know what I'm saying?
Temporary.
Yeah, some covenants restrict all outbuildings, some say you can have them, but they have to match. Like Ron said, they have to match the exterior of the house.
They can't be so big,
Yeah, so many square feet.
so many square feet.
I mean, most people want something, no one.
So does anybody have any thoughts on exterior of homes?
I don't know where they came from.
Hey, yeah,
What's that?
is that what you mean,
Yes.
facade treatments?
Facade, yeah. Is it brick, is it siding? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
My opinion is I'd stay away from brick. I mean, not everybody likes brick, but you know, stone or siding or some, you know.
You need something, but the brick, in my opinion, isn't as attractive as it used to be.
And the siding's really popular right now.
Especially with the colors. Yes.
One thing about the siding also is what kind, because they do have the metal siding. So if you're wanting to stay away from old barn, you want metal siding.
So we need to look at the type of siding, what you're saying.
Like also the color.
What's that?
The color?
The color?
Put color restrictions in.
Also fences, we do privacy fences a lot of times, and some of them don't like that. Or they do want it, one or the other.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. That one gets controversial quick sometimes too.
You get 5, 6 foot tall, it starts to view.
If you've got a fairly small lot, and it's got
Who's
6
gonna
foot tall
maintain this
fences.
park?
It's a good question. Haven't figured that out. It ain't my job.
Keith,
I've been cutting trees already. I don't need to maintain anything else.
To me, it looks like, it makes 2 nice building sites,
More than likely it will.
you know.
I'm just saying.
Because of the fact that
The-
the county don't want another
The
park.
main reason that we didn't put lots on it to start with is we felt we maybe needed storage area, so we left it open. So that's part of the reason behind that, Keith.
If I was looking to buy a lot, that'd be one I'd want.
Well, we'll sell it to you. Is that an offer, Keith? Well,
If you're selling it for 10, I can sell it for 20.
You can't do that.
You can't do that.
That one you can't do. You can build a house on it and sell the house, though.
So, this isn't gonna be like an HOA though, right?
that's,
Homeowners
No.
Association? Because
No.
when you go to restricting colors, I mean,
I
I
don't
understand the
agree with
metal on the
that.
side though, you don't wanna look like a pole barn. But when you go to restricting colors,
you're right.
I mean, I lived in Florida for 15 years and we couldn't paint the color of our door what we wanted to.
These are just people's ideas.
Yeah, no, we're not, the intent is no HOA, no.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we just want a set of basic covenants that anybody can enforce, but you're not gonna have to pay a maintenance fee, you're not gonna have to,
Would it be comparable to that? Don't they have covenants or restrictions other places in town?
Do we have any?
Not that are followed.
well,
Fair
there's
shake.
covenants out at, the Highlands have covenants. There aren't any in Tell City proper that I'm aware of.
The idea is you don't want a hodgepodge of a place where people don't want to live because they don't like what their neighbor built.
I think, there's a fine line between being too restrictive and just being sensible about it, so I think.
And that's why
we
I'm
want to
gonna-
err on the side of sensible.
We're just going to make our list and kind of work through it is what we're going to do over the next 30 days and kind of come up with what we believe is a good rule and then see if everybody else believes it or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Like some restrict fencing, no fencing in the front yard, but they allow fencing in the backyard, some say.
And they
no
can restrict
fencing.
height.
Some say height, some say.
And where is it? Is it
Yeah.
on the line? Does that have to be 3 feet off the line?
Setbacks.
Yeah, so.
Are you going for shingle roofs? Are you gonna allow them to do pole barn metal roofs? I mean,
Honestly, if you want my opinion, this is what it is, it doesn't matter to me.
Some houses look great, though.
yes,
Some would,
oh, I
yeah.
agree. But if you're restricting the metal on the walls,
I think.
you know, I
And
mean,
there's some real good looking barn dominiums out there too.
oh, yeah.
There are, but I think once you open that can of worms, you open that can of worms.
I understand.
So is the person building the house buying this lot, or is the builder gonna buy the lot and then sell it?
Well, you can do it two ways, I think, and we haven't got all that details. You can do it two ways, that either the builder can, as an example, if the builder says, I'm gonna build a spec house, the builder's gonna be buying the lot, and they'll just include it in the price of the house. If you as an individual come in and say, I'm gonna build a house, at that point in time, when the house is, at that point, you will be the buyer of the property. Okay?
So if I build a house and pay $10,000 for it, then I can mark the house up $20,000
Yeah,
to make up.
absolutely, absolutely. What we're trying to do is, the reason for initially we thought about not even charging for the lots, but they've got money, the hospital's got money invested in this property, and they would like to get some of their money back, okay? So that's where that's kind of come from, and I think it's only fair. So we tried to get that price as cheap as we possibly can in order for that to happen. So, And I didn't, we talked about this last year, and, how fair is it just to give property away? I honestly had a little bit of a hard time with that. Yeah, I'm not a real big government guy, if you haven't figured that out. We're just dealing with this stuff because we think it's necessary. What was that, Keith?
I'll tell you later, John.
I'll tell you later.
I'll just pump up the ears and I'll be able to hear you. Any other thoughts? I mean, do you think, does anybody think we're totally crazy? I'll just lay it out that way.
Is there like a lottery of how these lots will go up? Or is it
We
just
haven't
like
figured it-
opening day that people get?
We're gonna, when they're available, I think we're just gonna have it kind of opened up and said, hey, they're available. My initial thought, and we've talked about this just briefly, and Chris is working on, because that property is currently listed, we're working on it through the current realtor. It may be that we actually have to just open it up to the realtors and say, okay, realtors, here you go.
But a lot of the builders have realtors.
They do. And anybody can, we're not gonna restrict it to a realtor.
So an individual can buy them as well.
Yep. The key is to minimize any cost that we can minimize for anybody, which is like minimizing the tap-in fees. Tap-in fees are just a nuisance, but right now, the city of Tell City charges them, and
Absolutely.
we're
You
trying.
can't get away from it.
We're trying to work on that too, indirectly, because it's a nuisance. It's a
Now
nuisance.
changed the name to a hookup fee.
It's still a check though, right?
Yeah, it's still a
Okay.
check, but I mean,
So we're trying to eliminate those kind of fees and costs that just keep they irritate and they add up.
The
Okay?
problem is you get, people, 10,000 is not much, so people come in and snap those lots up. But that's why you've got to have some rule that says, hey, you got to have a house built on that lot within X time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why wouldn't I just walk in there and, assuming I've got the money, buy 5 lots, 6 lots, sit on them for a little bit?
And we've discussed restricting how many you can buy at one time. Things like that. So you can't buy 15 of them and work on 2 of them.
Keeping in mind what we're trying to accomplish here,
Correct.
and that's getting houses on, not just selling lots.
Yes.
well, that's kind of what I was gonna ask, like if say Ron came in and bought 5 lots, well, he's building a house at a time. Are you gonna give him more time if he's only wanting to do one house at a time as it goes?
Yeah.
Or are you gonna say, we're gonna have to have all these lots, a house on each house, or a house on every lot within?
I think when we get to the time restriction, and I'll say this, I think we're going to be pretty lenient. As long as the intent continually be followed, if it looks like there's somebody taking advantage of it, I think we're going to have discussions. Is that fair?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
what we don't want, and Chris and I talked about this, we don't want somebody to come in and try to profit on the backs of the taxpayers, okay? And that's where, even some of the utilities.
The sale price of this lot, you're saying you're gonna be around $10,000 a piece?
Mhm. Absolutely.
I mean, you ask me, that's a damn bargain.
Well, no kidding.
I mean, I just paid $30,000 for a lot on 24th Street.
With no risk, Ron.
It's all there.
There's no risk. The objective is to stimulate people to build houses and get people to live here.
If it's right now, I'd start one tomorrow.
Yep, that's exactly
I
right.
don't have any to sell until it's here right now. Not that I would-
So the backside of this, when you look at the mathematics of this, we're estimating it's gonna cost about $1 million to do this, okay? I've also estimated we're gonna start bringing in somewhere between about $50,000 and $60,000 a year in tax revenue. Okay? It's a 5 to 6% return on investment every year. So it's not like we're just totally giving stuff away. We're taking property right now that we're getting 0 tax base on, and we're actually gonna get a tax base on it, which is why we're so interested in the downtown property, Ron, also. Okay? But we also know that the challenge here is we don't have places for people to live that are comfortable. Nothing against flipping houses, but how many times can you put paint on the same house and turn it over, okay? There's a lot of people that don't, number one, they don't want to build their own house, they want to move into a house, we know that. And number two, they want to move into a new house, not one that was built in the 1950s. And we have not had any major building here for the most part. We've had a few here and there since about, I don't know, the late 1990s. There, when 23rd Plus was built. And it was done very similar to this. If you really think through that whole process, it was done very similar to this. So we were open for any discussion on this. We're open if somebody has an issue, don't put it on the Facebook, call one of us, okay? Because all that's going to do is create more issues. And more than likely, it's not going to be the truth anyway. So contact anybody on this commission. They're all well up to snuff on what's going on, even though they don't want to speak very much today for some reason. I don't know why. But this is our intent, and our intent is for each one of you that are in the construction trade, we want you to make some money on this deal, okay? But we ultimately want to make sure that the homeowners have a good product.
One thing, John, you might want to consider, depending on how this plays out, that you're representing, you're selling it for $10,000. You may want to make it a loan that after you've performed what you've represented you're going to do, the loan becomes forgivable. Maybe a way for you to put a little teeth into this so someone doesn't attempt to pull something on you that, outside of it. And it's a simple thing. If the lot's worth $20,000, $30,000, you sell it for 10, you loan them 20, forgivable after they build their house in 12 months, 18 months, whatever that term is, whatever you decide that is. And then that way, it's not a cheap lot if they leave it set. Or either it reverts back to you in some fashion, because your intent is not vacant real estate. So they'll be serious when they come in and buy one of your lots.
I mean, the advantage we do have, we will not do a deed transfer until the house is completed. That's one way that we're going to be able
So
to
the
do it.
banks are gonna want some type of
They're gonna want, they want number one on there.
yeah. they're
You
not
can have a
gonna-
number two, but they want number one.
And if somebody's came in and partially started a house and it's laying there, you're not getting anything because the house is a mess.
And which is our risk. That's one of our risks. This isn't risk-free. I mean, I can tell you that, it's not risk-free.
My biggest concern is how it's structured, Randy, for that very thing. How it's structured to make sure that it gets built all quick. A lot of other communities, I see this time and time again, people come in and make a big representation as to what they're going to do, how the community will benefit, how many people will be employed, how much taxes will be paid. The town gives them the shirt off their back. In reality, the sun rises and 20% actually is achieved at that site, but they've given away as though 100% was going to be done. A lot of communities now are loaning the money with the stipulations they're going to perform. The loan then becomes forgivable after 5, 10 years, whatever that period is. But it keeps them honest. And I know of one county in particular that has got a lot of money back from a lot of people that made representations. So it goes on, and it's something to consider.
Anything else?
I've got a question. I have a question. Will there be restrictions on the contractors that can build? So from
We can't restrict that.
Jago Homes and.
You can't restrict any of that, no.
Yeah, we're a county entity, so we aren't.
You know, we would love to use anybody local that we could. I mean, that's really what we would like to do, because we also know that if we can support those that are here, it just supports the entire community. Yeah, this is not about making tons and tons of money. This is about a community now, which is really our purpose. I know that sounds kind of weird in this world, but I still think we have to go back to that we are trying to grow our community. And for some of the meetings, if you haven't been here, if we don't, we're done. This community will actually disappear. So we don't have a choice. And yeah, do we have a lot to work through? Absolutely, we have a lot to work through. Will we get taken? I sure hope not. I sure hope not. And we're going to do everything we can to prevent that. And that's why I wanted to have you all come and just, nothing else, hear what we're doing, and number two, think through it, and it gives you an open door to have that conversation with anybody on this commission. To say, hey, you're either crazy or you're not crazy. or we need to do this, or we need to do that. But also let you know that it's happening, because we don't want anybody to be surprised. And the only list we had was the list that Steve gave us, and that's hence why we sent out the letters. And this, hopefully this is not the only thing that's going to go on. When you look at the housing requirements, besides apartments, duplexes, those type homes are needed, desperately needed, because there's a lot of folks that's what they need and want. This is just one little simple phase of it, and a way to help the contractors not have to come up with so much money up front and take all the risk. As a government entity, we're going to assume that risk.
Our hope is this works and we start somewhere else.
Absolutely.
That's our hope.
We're figuring out the process along the way. Our timing right now is not too bad because there is more money out there for things that we had not had for years because of the whole COVID response. So that's actually a plus for us too. We can utilize some of that. The more of that money we can utilize, the less money we have to use from in-house here, the Redevelopment Commission, which is going to allow us to do more. So, any other comments, folks? Bill's put Bill to sleep.
No, I've stayed with you the whole time.
All right.
I want to reiterate though that we do really want your feedback, and if you don't hesitate to reach out, because again, as John said, this is not something we do on a regular basis, and we want to create homes, we want to create permanency, we want to create an environment where people want to stay. That's the goal. Again, it's critical for the continued growth of this community, which we want, and I've always said, if you're not growing, you're dying. It's one or the other. It's, my background's in economic development. It's just the way it is. So we need to grow. We've been stagnant too long.
Yeah, the next meeting, we're going to get back with everybody on the time and place and date because they have voting in here, so we're going to have to move. So we're going to check with the annex to see what their availability is, and more than likely that's where we're going to be. If that's not there, we'll let everybody know where. If you all want to, I'll leave some paper out here. If you want to give us your email addresses so we can stay in contact with each one of you. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine too. But we will scatter out all the information that we have as this thing develops. We're hiding nothing. Okay, there's no hidden agenda here, folks. This is what it is. It's all, we're laying it all out to you. So, yes.
Obviously anybody can build they can have a contractor come in, but is there any kind of maybe local, if somebody comes and they want to build a house, but they don't have a contractor, they don't have it, is there some kind of list that can be made of local contractors, electricians, plumbers?
He's got one. Yeah, if they go to the zoning board, or zoning commission, he's got them. That's where we got it from. And those are the folks that are licensed within the city, correct?
Yeah, so that'll promote local.
That's correct. And it's also going to give a little bit of credibility too, because I guess you vet them somehow, right? You vet them somehow, right? Or vet them, I'm sorry, you vet them somehow. So yes. And hopefully what it does is if all this kind of halfway works, we're gonna get some sort of a system in here. So when somebody moves to town, we got a place where people can say, instead of trying to figure it all out, it's already all figured out for them. And we're trying to figure a lot of it out because it's not real clean. And that's one of the other objectives we have, is to clean a lot of that stuff up. And we talked about the tap-in fees. I can tell you the city is getting their earful on that one already.
Well, I'm wondering if the price that'll come back will be, you'll pay a tap fee for every lot, and might be what they end up doing with their sewer system as far as money.
The plan is for us, no.
Okay.
Because we don't need that additional. That we're going to include that in our cost.
And I kind of wanted to touch on what Sarah said. The thing that is kind of interesting and kind of scary at the same time is people like Jago that bring in all out of town contractors, and they can flip houses literally in 3 to 4 months, they're done. And that's, I think that's where she was going with it, it's like, what happens if this guy's buying lots faster than
Well, and I think
construction can build a house, or Ron can build a house.
all we can do there is try to restrict how those lots are sold. But you can't go and buy 10. Because you're right, I mean, it's a different, they work in a different world, I think.
What's the time frame on all the covenants? I mean, how will they get, the community get a hold? I mean, I don't mind giving
I would
mine
say,
back.
I want over the next 30 days, if you have comments over the next 30 days, let us know, because at the next meeting, we're gonna try to line a lot of the stuff out. We are not sitting on our hands, I'm gonna tell you that right now. This thing is moving on. This thing is gonna move on, and we're going to come up with our best ideas. We want your input, but if you all choose not to put your input, we're gonna get our own inputs in, okay? We've moved fast, and we're gonna continually move fast. Because if we don't, we're gonna lose the momentum. If we lose the momentum, this thing ain't gonna happen. And we've got too much time and energy invested in it at this point in the game.
So if you put a limit on how many houses someone can buy, do you need to put a limit on how many spec homes can be put up?
Something to consider, we need to talk about that, yeah. It's an idea. Because we know most people, not everybody's honest, we know that, okay?
But you want to make up something to where the houses can't be so dissimilar that they're
Correct.
odd to each other.
That is correct. That is correct.
The houses look so dissimilar to each other that it looks odd.
One of the ideas we threw out early on, and I think we've kind of gotten away from it, is actually have like 4 or 5 designs, and we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. Because we don't want to be in the housing
I lived in
business.
Florida for 15 years, and you have, they're similar, but you change the hips, you change the valleys. I mean, it's pretty easy.
But we don't want to be we're not in the building world, okay?
Right.
We're creating the property.
But you're looking at making restrictions for that.
We're looking at that because we want consistency.
Right.
But we also don't want 27 houses and 13 look like one design and 13 look like another.
Right.
We don't want that either.
So it may be that we actually have a way to approve or disapprove of the plans before they're built. I don't know. I'd hate to do that because,
Well, you avoid the-
again, we don't
you said you have
really
5 or 6
have the time or the know-how to do that on this commission.
You have 5
And the
or
other
6
thing you have to understand about this commission, this is only a 1-year commission, so everyone that sits up here tonight could actually be out of here January 1 of 2023, if the commissioners and the council so approves. Correct?
Tony's a 2-year.
I'm a 2, except for Tony. He's special,
He
though.
can't vote.
So if it looks like we're going in the right direction, all we're gonna do is ask for anybody's input if everyone wants to continually on, even going into 2023. So, that's my bit of politicking for the day.
Do we have other properties that this could be done to?
We have others that we've looked at, but none that we've gotten this close with.
None are as easy to develop as
This is actually the simplest one. There's another piece, but it would be really expensive to develop. It's much larger, but it'd be really expensive to develop. But that's not to say we won't try it again, if we can find something.
This is our springboard
Yes.
effort.
You had something, Ed? No. Oh, okay. All right, with that, if there's no other comments, questions, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion, a second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all for coming. If you want to leave your email address with us, name and email address, we'd appreciate it. And we will stay in contact.